All right, welcome everyone to another exciting episode of our BSK Insights podcast. Today we'll be talking about creek bank repair projects, and we have three distinguished guests here, all from BSK Associates. We have Kevin Grove, Cristiano Mello, and Michael Romero. If you've been following us, you know that both Michael and Cristiano have been on our podcast and talked about emergency response projects. So today, our newest guest, Kevin Grove, we'll hand the microphone off to him for him to introduce himself and talk to us a little bit about what he does and his role at BSK Associates. So, Kevin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Grove. I'm the managing principal for the environmental services at BSK. Been with the firm now for a little over 12 years. Started right after college and enjoyed it so much, really haven't even looked anywhere else because we have a great company and get to work on a variety of projects, which is something that I find truly enjoyable. Some of the things that I cover specifically are phase one environmental site assessments, due diligence for commercial property transactions. A lot of times when we do that work, we do find contamination on properties, and we help our clients with mitigating those issues, working with the regulatory agencies on getting them back up and running, able to sell the property, cleaning up any contamination that is present. That's just one small subset. We also have a wide suite of environmental sampling from groundwater monitoring to soil sampling, soil vapor sampling, indoor air. We work a lot with counties, cities, local government agencies, but also our private clients ranging from clean energy, so solar farms, and then just property development in general. One of the reasons why I truly enjoy what I'm doing here is it gets me out to different parts of the state. I've been up in the mountains collecting samples. I've been down in the valley, and you get to meet quite a few different people. And hopefully, a golf course is involved. It's one thing that I'm very passionate about, and I do have a project right now working on a phase one and phase two for a former golf facility. And yeah, that's just a little bit something that I truly care about beyond work. So,
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Kevin. Let's move on to Michael Romero. Quick introduction, friend. Tell us what you do.
Hello, Michael Romero. I'm a professional geologist, licensed certified engineering geologist in California. I've been with BSK for 9 years and I work in the Livermore office.
Awesome. Cristiano, you're up.
Hello, everybody. I'm a registered geotechnical engineer in California, have been in the industry for about 25 years, and I serve as the managing principal for the Bay Area offices.
Awesome. Well, Cristiano, let me start off by asking you the first question, and that is what is the most critical aspect of creek bank repair projects?
Well, I think, based on my experience, is certainly getting the regulatory agencies involved early on so you don't proceed and, with some repairs that will not be approved. The more input you have from the agencies, the better, because then you can tailor the repair accordingly. You can address things like, bio engineered solutions, habitat, as well as, anticipate what kind of monitoring program the agencies will be requiring.
Awesome. So I guess if you want to maybe expand a little bit on why it is important to get the regulatory agencies involved early in the process, is there anything else? I would say like nuances that people should hear about and know why it's important to get them involved quickly.
Well, I mean, if you don't, you could spend quite a bit of your design budget for something that's not going to get approved or will have to be mostly redesigned, right? For instance, a lot of regulatory agencies really don't like, hard solutions like retaining wall, concrete, things that are not native to the site, right? So the more you can bio engineer your repair, including plants, vegetation, things that are decomposable. Um, the more likely your project is going to succeed.
Awesome. Well, speaking of bioengineered solutions, Michael, you want to talk about what are some of those examples?
Yeah, so Cristiano sort of led it right into it. Bioengineered solutions combine natural biodegradable materials and you apply it in an engineering way. And Cristiano had mentioned vegetation. What I like to use a little bit, or we like to recommend on some of our projects, are live staking or straw wattles. Live staking is different than straw wattles. Straw wattles are non-living organisms. They basically are placed on the creek bank and are there to help control drainage. Live staking, however, will actually be planted, and it helps in the interim with reducing erosion, but it also will have a root system that eventually catches on and will allow it to improve bank stability while also improving habitat for the creek bank.
Awesome. Yeah, I like to go a little bit more in depth into that and find out what's the typical lifespan of bioengineered solutions compared to ridge solutions such as culverts, retaining walls, and rock slope protection.
Yeah, so bioengineered solutions, it really depends on where you place them and what kind of creek you're dealing with. There's high energy creeks that really won't allow much vegetation to grab hold, like I had previously mentioned live stakes. They need some time to grab hold. But something with a high energy creek, you may have some bioengineered solutions that last maybe 2 to 5 years. It also depends on how many storms occur. And as I mentioned, the energy of the creek or the water flowing through the creek. And but if you have some low energy creeks, meandering rivers, creeks like that, you may be able to see bioengineered solution last up to 10 years. It'll still definitely degrade over that 10 years, but if you have a living organism like a live stake, it may just hold and just improve again the creek embankment. Now for culverts and retaining walls, if you're going to go with something like that, we call it a gray solution versus a green solution. That will probably last up to 30, 20 plus years if it's installed and constructed correctly.
Awesome. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I know that that kind of leads us into our next question, and that is the explaining the process for creek bank repairs for emergency response projects. And Kevin, why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and give us your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it really ties into how Cristiano started. Is once you identify that this is an emergency type of project, is get the regulatory agencies involved as quickly as possible. There are mechanisms within the regulations to get the repair completed as quickly as possible, rather than waiting on specific permits that can take quite a bit of regulatory review time, and making sure everything is designed accordingly. For example, if there's an access road that allows fire support, that is obviously an emergency type of response, because you have residences that need that fire support. And if the road is eroded away on a creek bank, that's something that needs to be repaired quickly, and you can't take as much of the time to do that. Now, that doesn't mean that you get to just go off the rails and do whatever you want. You're still going to be working closely with the regulatory agencies. You're going to be documenting everything you're doing, lots of photographs. You're going to design something that is going to be either a temporary replacement that's going to stabilize the creek bank, or it's going to be something that's a little bit more permanent. But once that is completed, and I think I might be jumping ahead of myself here a little bit, Michael, but once that is completed, you are going to have ongoing monitoring at that site to ensure that the mitigation measures that you implemented are taking effect, and they're holding for the life of the project, so that there's no further fallout on your repair.
Awesome. Well, that's one of the key things is making sure that there's a follow up effort, and then there's opportunities for continued engagement. So, what does that timeline look like, and how long does that engagement process with the regulatory agency continue after the repairs have been made?
It can vary depending on the project, but I know, at least for, say, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, they'll have repairs where you're planting a native species back, and they want to make sure over the course of 5 years that species is now taking hold. It's not been washed out by just general, slope, erosion, and making sure that that is sustained. So, yes, there's ongoing efforts that you need to maintain for typically 5 years up to 10. But that's something that's going to be on a case by case basis with the regulatory agencies.
Awesome. So I want to open up this opportunity now to get everyone's final feedback on what you want to say to folks watching this. Is there anything specific as it relates to this topic that maybe you haven't been able to communicate and you're thinking maybe is a good idea as a follow-up? So why don't we start off with Cristiano? Is there anything additional you want to add to this topic to help folks maybe even were thinking about it, the agencies that are obviously involved with this activity? What would you say to them?
I would say, as soon as you identify the issue, contact your lead consultant to do a site visit and kind of do an initial assessment what needs to be done, right? Because that, will kind of set in motion, a plan, if you will, on how things should evolve, rather than just wait for the problem to be worse. In the case that Kevin was mentioning, if you have a creek bank failure that is endangering a emergence road, right? You don't want that to get out of hand. You want to get in there, quickly assess, is this something that can wait a week or two, or does it need to be immediate? By the afternoon, do you need to start putting sandbags as a stopgap measure until the actual repair can be designed? Or is it something that, hey, the storms have passed, it'll be dry weather for the next month, we got a little bit of time to engage with the agencies? Or no, there will be another round of storms tomorrow, and if we don't do something, it'll be too late.
Gotcha. Well, Michael, what do you have to say? Final thoughts on
Um,
this?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I would just like to add that when you're close to a natural body of water, a creek, and in this case, a creek embankment, it's very common to assume that one or more regulatory agencies will be involved. We've had several projects where we're pretty high up on the creek embankment, and we've still had to have involvement with more than one regulatory agency. So just assume that if you're in a creek embankment, you will have to likely deal with one or more regulatory agencies.
Gotcha. And Kevin, you got anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think echoing what Cristiano and Michael said is, notify the agencies early, often, and I think just overall with the initial site assessment is just document as much as you possibly can of when it occurred. Take initial photos. Hopefully, you have photos before the damage occurred, because one of the things that are going to be required by regulatory agencies is to replace it essentially to pre-existing conditions, so pre-damage. And so that's something that needs to be considered, or at least an improvement. So yeah, I would just say document, lots of photographs.
Awesome. Well, folks, if you've been tuning in to our podcast, you've heard from our three distinguished guests, subject matter experts in the field. We will have contact information at the end of this podcast. So if you want to reach out to either Kevin, Cristiano, or Michael Romero, we'll have the means for you guys to do so. I highly do recommend that you connect with them. They have a lot to say, as they are exceptional experts in the field with extensive years of experience. So it definitely does behoove you to connect with them and speak to them. And of course, we want to thank you for joining our podcast, and look out for more great and interesting BSK insights. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.